Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insiders presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Evan Grant and Calvin Watkins. Fellas, it's a beautiful spring day, a little crisp here in Dallas. Evan, what's it like out there in Surprise?
Hot as hell.
Oh, that's right. It got up to 100 degrees yet?
I don't think it hit 100 yesterday, but I believe by the time the camp breaks, it's supposed to hit 107 on Saturday.
107 in March. Oh my gosh. Those people will be broiling in August.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It really is. The heat.
But it's a dry heat, though.
Yeah, it's a dry heat. It's a dry heave is what happens when you get that kind of heat on you. Kevin,
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you before we get into Calvin.
Yeah?
You introduced me as your pal. Are we still pals after you spent 5 days with me?
I tell you what, it really tested it. You know, by the end of that 5 days in Surprise, man, I was at one point, I startled Evan because he woke up with me with my hands around his throat. No. It was
Well, I
all
had
good.
a deadbolt on my bedroom door.
Kevin said that with with a serious tone. I almost half believed him.
No, are you kidding? It was all great. We had a big time. You know, the Rangers weren't so happy to see me out there, but it was always good to have Evan to fall back to. So that was good. And we're going to talk about the Rangers a little bit and a story that Evan wrote about Corey Seager that kind of made up for some I guess some awful things that I wrote. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit. First of all, Calvin, let's talk about these Cowboys and what the heck are they doing? I mean, how's this offseason going? I'm having a hard time following some of the moves that they're making here. Although I frankly was not surprised to see that, they had to get rid of one of the contracts of those defensive tackles. The three most expensive guys on defense were all playing the same position. So not good. And I guess that was inevitable that was going to happen. But part of it also was because of the defense that the new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, is instilling there, right? So they're going to play a 3-4 instead of a 4-3. So, so for the people out there who don't really know that kind of lingo very much, tell us the difference as far as personnel and what that requires to go from a 4-3 to a 3-4.
I'll be as basic as possible here. 3-4 is 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers. 4-3 is 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers. You can play your scheme, your formation with different types of sizes. Bill Parcells, who did it in 2003, he wanted big, gigantic guys. So, like the 3 down linemen, you have a nose guard. He goes right up on the center, and he's going to take on the center and the guard. He's a mammoth, 330-pound man, and that's what he does. Christian Parker doesn't want guys as big. He does want big people at nose tackle, which is what Kenny Clark is going to play. His defensive ends, he wants big defensive ends. So Quentin Williams, he can play defensive end. He can also play a 3 technique, which lines up between the center and the guard. They need another defensive end, something they really don't have right now. I'm sorry, they do have that. Rashawn Gary, who they traded for with the Packers, he will also play defensive end, and they will also draft another defensive end. Then they want the 4 linebackers. They want bigger linebackers. So the guy who led the team in sacks last year, Jadeveon Clowney, he's not coming back because he's a little too slim for them. They want bigger, faster outside linebackers to rush up the field. So that's what they're working on right now. So that's the biggest difference between the 3-4 and the 4-3. Now, they will also play what the Cowboys are calling a 4-eye. So you go, what does that mean? Well, a 4-eye is they will have the defensive ends line up on the inside shoulder of the tackles. That's why they call it the eye, inside shoulders. That's all football lingo. They will also play a 5-man front, something they did last year under Matt Eberflus, as Evan laughs. So all this, whether or not this works or not, we don't know, but this is the scheme.
So in this situation,
now.
Yeah, you are educated now. So Donovan Ezra, it affects him because like last year, right? He's what you consider a defensive end.
Yes, sir.
But now he's going to be an outside linebacker in the new
Yes.
formation. Right.
Yes, he
Okay.
will be. Maris Leofau, who was an inside linebacker, he's going to play outside linebacker this year. And they want
And
him to
so
pick up some muscle.
and the inside linebackers next year would be DeMarvion
Kevin,
Overshow would be one of them, right?
yes.
And then the other one is we have no idea.
It could be Christian Vasquez. It could be Evan Grant. It could be Kevin Sherrington. It could be Calvin Watkins. It
Will
could be
not be
Shamar
Evan Grant.
James. It could be
Yeah.
Shamar James, who was a rookie last year. So they are looking, they need a middle linebacker, or as they call it, a Mike linebacker, someone who can make all the signals and that kind of thing. So that's what they're looking for right now.
And right now, since they haven't gotten that in free agency,
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that that's going to be a priority in the draft, wouldn't you?
Yes, it will be. The interesting thing about that is you go, well, do you want to draft like a middle linebacker and quarterback are almost the same thing? Because quarterback is the most important person on the offense because he handles the ball. The second person that handles the football, right? And the middle linebacker, he's got to get everybody lined up. So do you want to trust that position with a rookie in a year that you're coming off? I think they won 7 games, they make the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. Or do you want an old veteran, which they've done the last couple of years, to kind of right the ship, right? And then have a rookie learn underneath him. So that's the dilemma they're in. They tried to sign some inside linebackers. Nakobe Dean was one guy they were interested in, but he went and signed with the Raiders instead. So they need an inside linebacker. They probably need another corner in the draft. They need another big defensive end. And they probably need another guard or tackle or two going forward.
So, as I alluded to earlier in the podcast, they had the 3 defensive tackles: Kenny Carter, Quentin Williams, and Osa Odighizuwa. Osa being the smallest of those 3 and also the youngest, even though he's been very productive as a pass rusher. I believe he had more quarterback hits, or was it, I don't remember if it's quarterback hits or quarterback pressures. I think it was pressures.
Mhm.
He was like the 3rd most of any defensive tackle in the league. Which sounds like a really good thing. But apparently Osa being a little undersized, not as good against the run, although his numbers last year, according to Pro Football Focus, were better than Kenny Carter's. So I know you like Kenny Carter because you feel like he's a real leader in that locker room and they need
Mhm.
one. Did it come down to that, or did it come down to the fact that obviously Kenny Carter can play nose tackle and Osa Odighizuwa can't?
When I asked the Cowboys, tell me why you got rid of Osa, the first thing they say to me is he's got position flexibility. He can play all over across the line. I go, okay, that's cute, but you traded him to San Francisco. And of the 3 players, as you mentioned, that play the same position, and you rank them in skill and all that kind of stuff, he was 3rd on the list. You could say Quentin Williams, Kenny Clark, and Osa Odighizuwa. So they decided to trade Osa Odighizuwa and lower the cap number of Kenny Clark to create space on the cap. So, but Osa can play defensive end. He can play inside as well. And he is a little smaller compared to the other 2 guys. But let's be honest, he's not as good as the other 2 guys. And so then you say, well, why did they sign him? Huh?
You don't think he's as good as Kenny Clark?
No. I mean, if he was, I don't think when they signed Osa to the contract extension last March, it was a really good deal, right? And then when the Micah Parsons thing blew up in their face and they decided to make the trade, one of the things Jerry Jones said is we got to improve the run game. And Osa is not very good against the run. They needed another defensive tackle, and that's Kenny Clark. And he's better than Osa. And then once they decided to try to save the season, they made another trade. They got another defensive tackle that's better than Kenny Clark and Osa Odighizuwa. So, and that guy was Quentin Williams, obviously. So then at the end of the year, when they evaluate the roster, they said, we can't afford to have over $60 million in cap space at one position, right? Quarterback is one thing, but not defensive tackle. So when you say who are our top 2 defensive tackles, you say it's Williams and Clark, and Osa, you got to go. And that's what happened.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty though, because even though they are getting rid of that contract, it's $16 million of dead cap space, right, for this year.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
they only
sir.
saved like $4 million this year, which is something, and certainly in the long run, it is saving something. So, and getting a third back, was that enough from the 49ers?
You know what? They got more than what I thought. I
Really?
was texting. Yeah. I was texting with Joe Hoyt, and who you've had here many times, and I said they'll get a 6 for him, maybe a 5, maybe a 5. Be happy with the
Wow.
6. And he goes,
Well, they got
no,
a 7
3.
for Solomon Thomas. Come on, they had to do
Right,
better than
right.
that.
I agree with you. And they get it. Also was drafted in the 3rd round, and that's exactly what they got for him. So,
Yeah.
I
All
was
right. Well, at
wrong.
least they got something back for that.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, if you look around the league, Calvin, at what other teams have done and improved themselves over last year, there's no question the Cowboys are better in personnel now than they were last year, right?
Yeah.
Overall, some of the moves they've made here in the secondary in particular. Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel like that they have made enough moves to keep up with everybody else's improvements this winter?
Well, I guess the best thing that they did was they re-signed their running back Javonte Williams, and they found a safety who's pretty good, and that's going to be Jalen Thompson, right?
Right.
So those are the 2 best things that they did. Um, you look at what Philly did. They got a corner. The Giants are rebuilding, right? They got a new coach, so we'll give them a pass. I think the Commanders need some help. I'm just focusing on these teams because they're in the division.
Sure.
I think Washington is okay. They need a pass rusher themselves, so it'll be interesting to see what they do in the draft. But I mean, I would say it's so hard because last year they made all these moves. They got Kenneth Murray and all these cats and George Pickens in a trade, and they didn't make the playoffs. And now,
Yeah.
and then and then this year they made these moves. They get Thompson, they get PJ Clark, they get Kobe Durant. Then they get a good backup quarterback in Sam Howell that's going to challenge Joe Milton. So I would say, I guess they did. I guess you do what you got to do, right? And you don't really know until you get into the season. Then you can evaluate it and say, okay, they did good. And the only reason why I answered the question that way is because there were times where I will say they had a great offseason and then they won 7 games.
Well, they wasted, and by that was PJ Locke, not PJ Clark. That's a restaurant, PJ Clark. But that's okay. PJ Locke, former Texas defensive back. Yeah. These are good moves. But we'll see. I'm not blown away by anything they did,
Yeah.
and you don't have to be blown away by it, right? In free
Right.
agency, the Cowboys have always been the type of team that we're just going to fill holes here. We're not
Right.
going to go out and make the big splashy sign, and we're going to just try to fill the holes so it makes it easier for us on draft day that we can take the best player available. But I would have to think now, Calvin, that in the first round that they're going to they have to. You may not have to get a linebacker in the first round. Now that they've got a 3rd round pick, maybe you do that then. But if you're going to put a rookie back there and starting at, as you said, the Mike linebacker and be making all the calls, it's got to be somebody really good. Now we've talked about that. We talked about it with Joe Hoyt. That C.J. Allen from Georgia might be that kind of guy. Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech might be that kind of guy. Who could step right in and make the calls for you and play good middle linebacker. Because I'm going to ask you this, Calvin. When's the last time? And I don't want to. I know what you're going to say here, but when's the last time the Cowboys had a really good middle linebacker?
Wow. Doomsday defense. No.
I don't think it was that long ago. I don't think it was Leroy Jordan that far
I
back.
thought Leroy did a good job. No, he did a hell of a job.
He
I would
did.
say Sean Lee.
Yeah, I would say Sean Lee too. He
Yeah.
was certainly great. He was just everything you wanted in a linebacker, except the fact that he couldn't stay on the field. Right?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I saw him at the Super Bowl. He looks like a stockbroker. He looks so slim. I'm sorry, Evan. What'd you say?
Go ahead, Evan.
No, I mean, I was just interjecting. That seems like a pretty big thing that he couldn't stay on the field.
Well, it
Yeah,
was a
he had
big thing. That's
hamstring
what
problems.
yeah, I mean, it is a big thing. But my point is that he at least had the talent and the wherewithal to play the position the way you wanted it played. You know, the Leighton Vander Esch and
He was
you
pretty
know
good. He
Taylor.
was pretty good for a while, but he had the neck problem too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
same thing, and that was a failed draft because they drafted a guy that they knew had a neck problem, and then drafted him in the first round, no less. So, and that did end his career. And Jalen Smith, the same thing. Never really recovered from the terrific or horrific injury he had at Notre Dame, and was never the player he should have been, or else they wouldn't be able to get him in the second round in the first place. So my point is that I believe they need to spend big here in this draft on a linebacker. I think they need if when that either at 12 or 20, whichever one it is, if there is a linebacker they can get there, then they need to do that. Unless it's a cornerback, and of course we've talked about it as well. Don't you think they probably do need to take the best cornerback they can get if there was one available at 12?
I think so. Because I don't know if you can depend on Deron Bland and Siobhan Revel long term. It was interesting that Jerry Jones said at the Super Bowl that they undervalued a slot corner, but they had one in Jordan Lewis and they let him go to Jacksonville, right? So you do need a cornerback with some position flexibility. They definitely need to draft a corner at 12, even at 20. Some people think that they should probably trade the 20th pick and get into the second round, right? But I think just because of how bad the defense was last year, you better get yourself everything that you need. I like Colton Hood. He was like a Tennessee cornerback at Tennessee. He's a really good player. You can get him at 20. And get you a pass rusher at 12, or a safety or a Mike linebacker. That's how many holes and question marks you have on the defense.
Yeah, there's no question about that. There's just about you could almost throw a dart and get something that the Cowboys need on defense, right? I mean,
Yes.
that is the beauty of it. You take the best player who's available at that point on defense because he's going to help you somewhere.
Oh yeah, I mean Sonny Styles. If you can get him, boom, he's a week one starter. One last thing, Jerry Jones had said this team is not going to have any more red shirts, not going to gamble on any more players that got coming off a health issue in college, because he said we need guys who can play from day one. So when you look at guys with either a troubled background or a health issue, I think the Cowboys, based on what Jerry has said, they are not going to go down that path.
Yeah, so that makes you wonder about Jamad McCoy from Tennessee, right? Who missed the entire senior season there at Tennessee. So although he had said that he could have played at the end of last year. So I guess that's the question for me, a guy like him, is he really unavailable, or would you question just because he didn't play his senior year, and does he need a little extra time, from after an injury like that, I believe it was an ACL, that he would need more time to be an effective player. But it's a good question. The problem is anytime you make a declaration and say we're not doing that anymore, you're just making the same mistake you made the first time around. Is that there's always an exception to a rule here, right? And let's not paint ourselves into a corner when we don't have to. Let's just take every situation as it comes up, and let's just see how good this really is, and before we make any declarations like that. But that's just like Jerry to do that. Calvin, we appreciate you coming on and staying with us today. It's always good to hear from you, get your takes on stuff.
Same here.
We'll be back there before we get to the draft for sure and talk some more about all that kind of stuff. And then, or in case Jerry just does something really crazy. So
maybe do something crazy. I saw him at the race the other day. He was in his helicopter trying to beat the windstorms. He was.
He was out there. He's all over the place. They love him out there. My gosh, I couldn't believe it. It was just like a Jerry love fest at that race on Sunday. They couldn't stop talking about him. Everywhere you turned, there he was. Cowboys cheerleaders, Brandon Aubrey and that 2-seater out there. With DeMarcus Ware, one of the co-starters with Pudge Rodriguez. It was just an extravaganza.
I will say I kind of like that setup in the Indy race, but then I was in Vegas for a game, yeah, and they were setting up for a race as well, and the city looked like it was just in a disaster area. But the way they did it in Arlington was nice. It was cute. It was near the baseball stadium, near the football stadium. It was really good. They did a nice job.
They everybody raved about it. I couldn't get over and it wasn't fake, because the drivers were all just went on and on and on about it, and talked about how it was the best street race they'd ever been on.
Wow.
They did it. They'd been doing it in Long Beach for 50 years, and you think, no, it was that some of them were calling it the second best Indy car race on the calendar, and of course, number one being the Indy 500. So if you're second to the Indy 500, that's pretty good. I don't know. I tell you, this could be a regular thing out there at Arlington. So we'll see. All right, Calvin. Thanks for coming by, man. We'll see you.
See you guys.
Bye.
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 Okay, there goes Calvin. Always good to have him on and talk about the Cowboys. You never can tell what Calvin might say, which is a good thing, right? I guess. All right. So Evan, you're out there in spring training. For today's paper, you wrote something about Corey Seager, which was
somebody
nice.
had to take up for Corey Seager.
Because somebody wrote that he was about as fun as a funeral director, which, boy, that line did not go over. And the point I was making when I wrote that was that Seager, about as fun as a funeral director. And then I said something fun that he had done out there, right? I was using it as to show you that he's not normally the kind of guy that you see doing a lot of fun stuff out here. And here he is being fun. But they didn't take it that way. I was told that it was a, quote, personal attack, unquote, on Corey Seager. I've talked to some other people who in the game or out of the game since then, and they thought that was a little bit of an overreaction on the part of Rangers management. But they got to say what they wanted to say, and I didn't apologize. I said maybe I didn't have to be quite as snarky, but I kind of made a career out of being snarky. And one of the things that I pointed out was that at the end of every year, I write a whole column making fun of myself. I set myself on fire in print every year, and I think that's a good thing. I don't know.
Would you let me set you on fire in life too?
Yeah, in life too. But anyway, I enjoyed your story about Corey because look, here's the thing about him. He's not good with us. He's certainly not good with me. Anytime I've ever talked to him, he's just as dry as toast. And I think that most people in the media get that from him. And he doesn't have to be great. I'm not saying that at all. That is not my point in any of this. If he's having a good time with his teammates, though, and as I pointed out to the manager in my discussion, at the end of the 23 season and on that great run that they made, of course, we all wrote about how Corey just let his emotions out, right? And after the home runs in the ALCS, and it was just a lot of fun to watch him have fun, and his teammates talked about it, how great it was. Marcus Semien talked about it, how much it meant to the team for him to do that. And I wondered, after that World Series was over, will he continue to do this, or will he go back to being the Corey Seager we all had seen before? Well, he went back to being the Corey Seager we had all known before, which, he's very, he doesn't want to talk about this kind of stuff. And I get that. But when your approach has an effect on other people, either good or bad, then I think it becomes, something that ought to be discussed, don't you?
Well, I just think, Corey is a guy that, and I alluded to this in the column, Kevin, we're in that clubhouse for about 45 minutes every day. And by and large, players aren't very much at their locker, and they're not really interacting a ton. And so what we see is not necessarily the deepest of scenes. Everybody that I've talked to has always said, look, Corey's invested in his teammates. He talks one-on-one with them. He does stuff one-on-one. Obviously Josh Smith is very, very fond of him. But we just haven't seen it. And I do think in some regards it's unfair of me to categorize Corey just as the way I see him, because I don't think it's the full glimpse. He is a guy that is very reserved in his emotions on the field. And it used to be, hey, just act like a professional out there, act like you've done this before. And in this new era of baseball, it's all about having fun, even to the point where, with Team USA, they're all about winning this tournament. And so they're not having enough fun because they didn't shake hands with teammates from their major league seasons like Cal Raleigh and Randy Arozarena. But I ultimately think that all I can give a verdict on is that I see a Corey Seager who just seems a little bit more free and light this year than the last couple of years. In 2023, during that run to the playoffs, they were playing cards in the middle of the clubhouse, and Seager was involved in all that, and he was doing some trash talking and laughing and so forth. And on the field, we saw that big yell during the World Series. And I'm okay if he wants to reserve that stuff for really big moments at really big times. I think that's fine. But I do also think that players and staff have seen a Corey Seager this spring that just feels a little bit, the way it was described to me, as lighter.
Yeah, and that's cool. And he's a great player. There's no question about any of that. But when you're paying a guy a lot of money, and and when you have got an owner who's dialing it back and has dialed it back this year for the payroll, it's incumbent upon that guy to be more than just a great player. I mean, that was the issue with Juan Gonzalez, right? Great player, not a great leader. Now, I'm not in any way comparing Corey Seager to Juan Gonzalez in terms of his leadership ability, any of that. I'm not questioning his leadership ability at all. But I do think it's odd when you say, all right, I'll be real excited here when we're winning the World Series or when we're going to the World Series, but the rest of the time I'm not going to be. It makes it feel like, do these games not matter as much then? I mean, obviously they don't matter as much because the difference between winning a World Series, but it was odd to see that happen then and then to see him retreat. Now, if he felt like something changed and he couldn't do that because of the relationship with Marcus Semien, and we've heard all about that about the even though Corey said the relationship was fine, I respect the fact he's not taking any shots at Marcus. I think that's a good thing. He doesn't need to be doing that. But if he felt like that he couldn't be himself around Marcus, well, then, okay, then that's an issue going forward. So we'll see. But the big thing, as Skip Schumacher pointed out, is that we want him to be healthy. We want him to be on the field as much as possible. And that's the big thing, because whether he's excited or not, if he plays 135, 140 or more games, then they're a lot better team when he's on the field.
For sure. And I think that is part of the quote unquote lightness. In 24, after the World Series in spring training, he was coming back from sports hernia surgery. In 25, ahead of last year, he was coming back from another sports hernia surgery. He did have the appendectomy in season last year, and it did take longer to get him back than the Rangers would have hoped. And then they shut it down when it became clear he wasn't going to they weren't going to be a factor. But he's had a normal offseason. It hasn't been a offseason of recovery. Now, he did have a child, and that's a significant life moment. But his offseason prep was pretty normal. And I think after 2 frustrating seasons of injuries, to have the ability to just prepare like you normally would like to and to just feel good, I think that's also going to improve your mindset going into camp and into the season.
Yeah, for sure. And we know that Corey has always liked to hit second, right? We used to hear, and I don't know if that's the case anymore, but there was a time when I remember that came up in a spring training about, somebody wanted to hit second. I was talking to Bobby Valentine about it, and Bobby was a little frustrated, and he said everybody wants to hit second because the guy who hit second sees more fastballs than any other place in the lineup. Usually because if the leadoff hitter gets on base, then you're going to see more fastballs the next hitter because they're they're trying to prevent this guy from stealing second or whatever. So I don't know how much that was a factor in Seager wanting to hit second, but now he's going to hit third in this lineup, and I think that's better for the Rangers. For him, he's their best hitter, and traditionally, the number 3 hole was considered for the best hitter. Although that has changed because you like to get guys at the top of the lineup, the more at bats over a course of a season. And I know you had that conversation with Skip about that.
Yeah, I did. And listen, I do think that the philosophy of, obviously, and I'm not trying to make you seem old here, but what happened when Bobby Valentine was manager and the way the game has changed now, I don't know that batting second is going to get you more fastballs, because pitching mixes are much more varied than they once were, and guys are throwing secondary stuff in the first inning. So I that part of it, I'm not sure if it's accurate anymore, but I do think from this perspective, if you've got a legitimate leadoff guy who's taking walks like Brandon Nimmo has and has a high on base percentage, and you've got a really good young hitter like Wyatt Langford hitting second, the chances of you getting up and with 2 guys on base and then having to see some fastballs probably increases. Um, and I think Corey is fine with hitting third at this point in time. I talked with Skip about this, and I said, look, I did this math. If he hits third as opposed to second, based on his number of plate appearances per game, he'd see about 15 less plate appearances if he plays 140 games. He said, I'll tell you what, if he gets 15 less plate appearances and plays in 140 games, I'll sign up for that because he's going to get more plate appearances overall. Secondly, I think that if this offense functions the way it will, or the way the Rangers envision it, then Seager should get more at bats per game than he did last year when he was hitting second, because they should be able to turn the lineup over a little bit more. And if Evan Carter is hitting ninth, you've got another on base guy. So you could come up in situations with lots of runners on base. I think this all trends in the right way for Corey Seager to be really, really productive this year.
Yeah, let's go over the lineup. What you think it's going to be? I think we had an idea 1 through 5, and maybe you have a better one now because I think they're obviously trying to balance it right left, and so or left right, I guess you would say, since Brandon Nimmo would be leading off. So give us the lineup as you see it probably being on opening day.
Well, considering we haven't had the full group out there for a game yet, I'm not entirely sure. But let's go with something along these lines. The first 4 I think are pretty set. You go Nimmo, Langford, Seager, Berger. It was interesting yesterday that Josh Smith and Josh Young were both in the lineup together, and Josh Smith hit 5th. And against right-handers, I could see Josh Smith hitting 5th and Josh Young hitting 6th. Maybe against lefties, you're going to have Young up there in the 5th spot. And then you get what am I missing here? Oh,
Joc
okay.
Pederson.
And then I think you could drop Joc Pederson to 7th against right-handed pitching. You come back with Kyle Higashioka in 8 and Evan Carter at 9, and what you have is you go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. It's immaculate balance. Now the only issue that you get into there potentially is you have Carter Nimmo coming up in. Once you turn the lineup over, you go Carter Nimmo. And it may create some lanes for opponents to deploy left-handed pitchers late in games. But for a starting lineup, that's a really nice balance.
It is nice balance. And I would say this, and I'm not trying to read too much into his start, but Andrew McCutchen has been terrific so far, especially for a guy who was on his couch a couple of weeks ago to come out and play the way he has. If he's going to be your right-handed DH, then I could see him dropping him in fifth. Couldn't you?
I think that's possible. Again, I'd like to see. Haven't gotten a real clear feel from Skip on how he intends to use Smith and Young. I did think it was interesting last night that Smith hit fifth. But again, in spring training, sometimes you're just trying to maximize guys' plate appearances, so it's not necessarily your starting lineup.
Right.
But Josh Smith has had a great spring. He really has. He's really hit balls hard. Andrew McCutchen has had a great first week in camp. He's really impressed this club. I think he has. I think he's taken the lead for that right-handed bat over Mark Canha. But Mark Canha had a good game on Sunday. Has a pair of home runs. He's hitting 300 this spring. He's got a really long track record. I mean, the Rangers have done a good job on the minor league contracts with trying to find that right-handed bat. It looks like in spring training, and so I think they'll have a good option going into the season. Um, I think the interesting thing in the lineup will be what do you do with Evan Carter? Do you hit him ninth and potentially set up some some tough lefty matchups for him, or do you try and find a better spot for him?
Yeah, that would be a question too. Going back to the McCutchen Canha question, which I think is a really good one because they both played well this spring, as you noted. Um, I can't see either one of those guys taking a minor league assignment, though. Can you?
No, I can't. I mean, I think, listen, the other part of that is that um, there will be a job out there for one of them if they don't make the team. I think they both played well enough that somebody who's looking for an extra bat off the bench will want to get one of those guys. I would think that if McCutchen doesn't make the team, he would just ask for his release. If I believe Canha has an out before the season starts, so the Rangers would have to make a decision on him. So neither guy is going to go to the minors. I really don't see it. Um, I think that the Rangers was just unfortunately the Rangers are going to have to pick one.
I'll say this: it's unfortunate they're both right-handed because I'd like that platoon of those two guys if one of them was left-handed rather than running Joc Pederson out there because Joc hasn't looked like anything this spring.
Yeah, I just filed a column about Joc for tomorrow morning, and it is really interesting. If you look back, Joc's spring trainings have a way of predicting how his season will go, but not in the way you think. He kind of is track record is whatever his spring training is, his season is the inverse. So maybe the fact that he's got a sub 500 OPS at this point in spring training is actually good. Last year he had he had a 1028 OPS in spring, and then we know what happened during the regular season. 24 with Arizona, he had a 558 OPS in the spring, 908 in the regular season, and it goes back that way really almost every year until 2018. I will just say this. I think Joc looks good. I think he's in a good place. I think he has worked hard with Justin Vealey on getting his swing back into a more to create more ability to lift the ball. The Rangers are going to give him some runway into the regular season. They're not going to write off $18 million before this season starts. So that every comment that I got from Skip Schumacher and Chris Young on this subject seemed to indicate that look, there's not a way that Joc is going to be let go before the season starts. Now his runway might not extend much past April, but that's a question for to dive into in April.
Yeah, well, it is. So we'll see what happens with all of that. So the last thing I want to get to before we get out of here, Evan, is just the bullpen because that's obviously a big question. What they're going to do there, what's going to happen at the back end of the bullpen. They were able to kind of cobble it all together last year, and as they have done multiple times over the last decade or so. The last time they had a big commitment to a closer was Joe Nathan, which was like, I don't know, 100 years ago. So, do you uh, do you see any kind of light at the end of the tunnel, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? I can't think of any of the cliches to talk about whether this thing looks like it's shaping up like it should.
Um, I I think that what has happened here is the Rangers the Rangers have gotten some trending upwards performances here of late. Josh Sborz has looked much more effective. His velocity is still a mile or so below where he'd like it to be. The interesting thing about his deal is he can't opt out until April 15th. So the Rangers could start the season with him in the minors to give him another 2 weeks with the lights on, as they like to say, try and build up a little bit more velocity, which may give them a little bit more flexibility with how they build the bullpen. I think the interesting thing is going to be, it still comes down to what happens with the number 5 starter, because if it's Kumar Rocker, then I think it's an automatic that Jake Latz goes into the bullpen in a significant role. If it's Latz, I think that the Rangers will at least have a discussion about a possibility of, in April, when pitchers are on limited pitch counts, potentially using Rocker out of the bullpen in a multi-inning role, almost a piggyback type role, where if you think Latz is not going to maintain velocity very deep into games, maybe you go 4 innings with Jake Latz and then you go 3 innings with Kumar Rocker a couple of times. That's a way to reward both of them for solid springs, get them onto the big league roster. And I think the other interesting element here is you got a Rule 5 pick in Carter Baumler, who you've got to keep but wouldn't have any minor league options. And minor league options are a really valuable tool at the end of that bullpen. You need to be able to switch some pitchers out, although you can't really do it until there's 10 days gone in the season. But Baumler has pitched really well, hasn't allowed an earned run. He's done everything the Rangers have asked. And if you look at this roster, it seems like he belongs on it, but it also, he's a guy with not much flexibility. So I don't know how the Rangers handle that aspect of it. So that's the other interesting dynamic in trying to put together the final spots in this bullpen. Right now, I mean, you've got Chris Martin, Robert Garcia, Cole Winn, Tyler Alexander, all guaranteed spots. You got Latz or Rocker potentially there. You've got I don't have my roster in front of me, so I'm a little bit searching for names.
I'm sorry you came unprepared.
There now.
Yeah,
So
sorry you came unprepared. That's too bad for this podcast. I'm sorry you came unprepared to this podcast.
Yeah, I didn't expect for you to for me to have to write down the whole roster. But I think that leaves you, it leaves you one spot pretty much to deal with, and that is the question there is, do you go Sborz? If you're going to keep Baumler, do you go Sborz? Do you potentially take another long reliever who would have a minor league out like Cal Quantrill, who pitched really well in the WBC? I don't think that there's a need right now to add Peyton Gray as well as he's pitched this spring to the 40-man roster. You can keep him on the minor league contract for the time being. Gavin Collier has been sent out but put himself on the map. And so I think that eighth spot comes down to, do you go into the season with Sborz, or do you try and keep one of these veterans who's on a non-roster deal, at least initially, and then go from there?
I'm partial to Sborz, because of we saw what he was capable of in the World Series, and especially in the clinching game.
I've always been a fan of Josh Sborz. I think his breaking ball is elite. I do know that, look, he's a little bit. We've talked about the velocity going back to last year, and I think he was frustrated by it. And I just do wonder if once the lights come on, if he'll either get that extra tick in his velocity, or will he look at the scoreboard, if he sees a 93, is it going to make him panic a little bit and lose some conviction in his pitches? And I think that's something the Rangers really need to dive into.
All right, I'm going to make a prediction here. Anytime a team does well in a season and it goes to the playoffs and maybe even wins the World Series, it's because of unexpected things happening, right? You can't always predict that, you come out of spring training and everything is set. We're locked in. This is it. This is the way it's going to be. Sometimes that happens, not very often. I'm going to say if the Rangers are going to be any good this year, it's because Cole Winn stepped up and became the closer. I think he has the best stuff to be a closer. The question is, can he finally ever put all that together?
I don't think you're really stepping out on a limb here. I don't know if Cole Winn will end up as this team's closer. I don't know that he's got the overpowering fastball that you would like in a traditional closer, that we've seen guys that don't have that be successful. But to your point, Kevin, you know, part of the reason the bullpen overachieved last year was that Cole Winn stepped up into a reliable role. I think if this bullpen is going to continue to achieve at a high level this year, Cole Winn's got to step up even more into a higher leverage role. He followed a lot of Sharon Armstrong's lead last year, and that helped him. And then I think you're going to have before the end of the season, whether it is Gavin Collier or whether it's Mark Church or potentially, even somebody like Jose Corniel or Emiliano Teodo, somebody else from this minor league system is going to have to step up and contribute. You've got to have somebody unexpected. And I think right now there are expectations on Winn that he will contribute. Now, exactly what role, I don't know, but you're also going to have somebody come up. I've left out in all of this a guy who I do think is going to end up on the roster, Luis Crivello. He's the optionable guy here, but he has been really good of late, has not allowed a walk this spring. That's something the Rangers really value in relievers. His strikeout, I think he struck out 10 guys in 7 innings or 8 innings. And listen, Crivello has a 95, 96 mile an hour fastball. Now, it's not plus like it's not Mason Miller for sure, but it is also something. It's higher velocity than anybody else that the Rangers have out there right now competing for a bullpen spot.
Okay. All right. That's going to do it for our podcast. I'm trying to get out of here. Okay.
Crivello is optional. So if he doesn't do well, you can then option him and bring somebody else up.
All right, you'd already said that, but I'm glad you said it again.
Did I say it already?
Yeah, you did. You said pretty much everything you said. You already said 2 or 3 times. I'm just going along with it just because I don't want to upset you or anything.
I'm sorry.
Oh, we're just joking, folks out there. Evan and I, we're big pals. We're big pals. So
yeah, Kevin only wanted to kill me once, I think.
Only once this year. Usually it's 2 or 3 times. I have that feeling in spring training. But it's still young. It's a season hadn't even started yet. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Kevin, I just want to share one last thing before we go. We'll sign off on this.
Sure. Okay. One more thing.
Here we go. It's Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day. And Tuesday, as we know, is a long-standing tradition in spring training of trivia night. Kevin joined our trivia team last week. And look, he had a great answer. We had a question, and it was just an actress's eyes. And you had to name the actor. And it wasn't a multiple choice question. You had to write the answer down. And Kevin immediately thought it was Susan Sarandon. Now, the risk was if we got that question wrong, we'd lose all our points. It was a double down question. Kevin had the answer. But when it came time to write it down, he backed away from his conviction. He became cowardly Kevin in that moment.
I did not back away. I was shouted down by people saying, she doesn't wear glasses. It's like, well, first of all, I mean, why can't she wear glasses every once in a while if she wants to wear them? And then, all I know is if we had gotten that, we finished second if out of a group of 15. If we had gotten that answer, we would have blown the doors off and won first place.
I know.
I'll have to say this. Evan had a lot of answers, and especially the geography answers, which just blows me away because, I barely know what street I live on. And Evan is just like, the king of geography. So I'm always impressed by people who know that kind of stuff.
I know the world. And as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to get back to my very important MapTap app and the world geography game that everybody's playing.
Yeah, everybody. Sure. I see the kids talking about it all the time. Hey, did you play MapTap app today? No, did not.
Very hot. All right, we got to get out of here, Kevin.
Yeah. Here we go. So from everybody in here and everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.